Hey, this is Johnny Kelly from Patriarchs In Black, and you're watching John the Ninja.
Ladies and gentlemen, how you doing? It's John the Ninja live in the dojo, aka the Dojing, and damn it, I gotta thank the following guilty parties for this great and grand opportunity. The first one, lo and behold, Rudy Sarzo. Second, Dan Lorenzo. And third, Samuel the Prophet, my buddy who has to this day kept his word and held me down. The gentleman I have here today has been classified as the busiest drummer in rock and roll. This Brooklyn native was influenced by Peter Criss, John Bonham, Bill Ward, and growing up, ultimately becoming the sound of a generation in goth metal. His accolades include Grammy nomination, platinum albums, and working alongside some of the most prolific artists of all time. That would be Danzig, I Am, Quiet Riot, Silver Tomb, A Pale Horse Named Death, and of course, the ever so known Type O Negative. But we are here to talk about his new band that have just released their sophomore effort, our fellow friend for the podcast, Dan Lorenzo. He's gonna beat me up if I don't say that. Dan Lorenzo's Patriarchs in Black. My Ventilation, which was released in October, has been given rave reviews, Grammy nominations, and is garnering respect not just in the metal community but rock and roll as a whole. Here to talk about it, a diehard Ranger and Jets fan, we'll forgive him, Johnny Kelly. Good sir, how are you?
How are you?
Oh,
On paper, it looks so good.
what's
Um,
up?
I keep forgetting that, and it makes me laugh every time I hear about it. The Grammy nomination. No, it's entertaining. No, it's cool. It's cool. Like it's all good. But yeah. What's up?
I'm doing well, man. I'm a little. I feel jet lagged, even though you're the one with jet lag, waking up so early to do this interview.
I got the bags under my eyes still.
You were in at the Alice Cooper Solid Rock Teen Center charity event last night.
That's
Yeah,
not.
the Alice Cooper's Christmas Pudding, it's called. Yeah. And that was it. It was in Phoenix. They do it every Christmas to raise money for the teen centers that they're affiliated with in the Phoenix area, I believe. And yeah, we went there. Quiet Riot played there. We went up and we played four songs, and it was a lot of fun. It was a nice night. It was cool. Uh, who else played? Nancy Wilson from Heart played. Sammy Hagar performed. The singer from Boston, I forget his name. I thought he was really good though. He had a uh, very Vegas like red sequined jacket. It was very very flamboyant. But he sounded great, and they had a great house band. Went by real fast. But I heard they raised like anywhere between somewhere between like 1.5 to $2 million.
That's
That's a
amazing.
lot of that's a lot of money. And they would do in between each performance. They also had like a I'm not sure which like what school or whatever they were affiliated, but there were a lot of kids, like kids bands, like School of Rock type stuff. They would get up, play a couple of songs. There were dance groups and stuff, and they would perform. And in between each performance, they would have like auctions, and they would auction off like guitars and art and things like that, and wound up raising a lot of money. But it was fun. I wanted to meet Nancy Wilson, and I didn't get to meet her. A little bummed out about that. But I met Alice Cooper and Sammy Hagar, so that was pretty cool.
Just looking at your career and just how fortunate you've been, not only to play with these people, but you text Bill Ward, man. You text him. He's your guy, and he even give you a seal of approval. But what I go back to is, you stated that your opportunities and the success really came when you stopped worrying about making it, and that's when you started becoming, this guy and all these projects and this music. Do you recall the moment you actually had that realization, like, you know what, I just want to play for fun, and then everything just started falling into place?
Before I joined Typo Negative, I had it was like at this point in my life, like a year or two before, I had been playing in bands and clubs and stuff like that for years. And my girlfriend that I was with for many years, she broke up with me. I had lost my job, my band broke up, and I had nothing. And I was just like, you know what? Maybe it's not in the cards. And I went, cut off all my hair, got a steady job. Like, I was, working on cars and stuff like that. And I didn't play for like a year. then a friend of mine was just like, why don't we get together and play? And I did, and we got together, and we just in the studio, whatever, just jamming and stuff. And I had missed it. I had missed it being in my life, and so I slowly started playing again. Just getting together with a couple of my buddies and stuff, and then the opportunity to join Typo Negative had come up. Sal had left the band, and I knew all the guys, so I called them up, and I was like, if you're gonna keep the band going, because at the time, Typo, they were like a local band with a record deal. That was it, because they weren't a touring band. There was no goals like that to conquer the world or to make it. It was just they had Bloody Kisses had just been released, and there wasn't any plans to tour on the record or do anything like that. And so I auditioned. I got the audition, and even before I auditioned, Peter used to come to my shop and hang out with me and my boss and stuff. I worked on his car a bunch, and so he comes over to speak to me, before I auditioned, and basically just tell me, look, don't quit your day job. It's not that kind of band. And at that time, I was like, you know what? I was like, I don't care. I don't care what we do. I was like, I just want to be in the band. I was like, I love the music, and that was it. And so then I went, auditioned, I got the gig, and then we would play, we did a couple of shows here and there, play Lamore's and stuff. And I think we did a show in Connecticut, or, there's only a couple of gigs. And then, months later, then it was like, can you get time off of work? And we're going to go on tour. And I was like, what do you mean? And I was like, I wasn't ready for that. So we did. I got off work, and we toured. We did a tour for 6 weeks, came home, went back to work. And then the phone rings again. It's our manager, and he's like, can you get some time off work? It's like, we got an offer to go out with 9 Inch Nails for like 2 weeks. It was I don't know, 10 or 12 shows or something on the West Coast. And so we jumped in a minivan and a little cube truck and drove cross country. And we did that, came home, go back to work, and phone rings again. Hey, can you get some time off? We got the Motley Crue offered us a support slot. And then from there, and that's what kept happening, that was happening in the summer. And then they put us on the road on our own. We were out for, I don't know, maybe, whatever, 2 weeks, 3 weeks on our own, maybe longer. I really can't remember. But we worked up until the Motley Crue tour, and then we started the Motley Crue tour. And then that's when the band was starting to get a name for itself. People were starting to pick up on it, and we were getting a little bit of radio play and stuff. And that's when I quit my job, when we were on tour with Motley Crue. And it just kept happening, and it never really expected it. Every time, Kenny and I have been doing a lot of press with IM and stuff, and with the releases, 30th anniversary of Bloody Kisses this year, and the 20th for Life Is Killing Me record. So we've been talking about a lot of this stuff lately. And you keep saying it, and it was really true. Every time we finished, the tour bus would stop and drop us off at home. We would, guess that's it. Go back to work, which is what we were doing in the beginning. You go out and, go back to work, go out. And at that point, the tours just kept on, lining up. And so you're only home for a week, 2 weeks, maybe. And then you're back on the road again. And then it's, here we are 30 years later.
What was the song that really gravitated to that band, particularly the first time? Or is there a song that now that just because you were there to play it live so many times, or just because you were in studios, that it really strikes you, when people talk about Christian Girl or I Don't Want to Be Me?
Those are the hits, but I was really into the band. I mean, like I said, well, I don't think I said it in this interview. Anyway, we all grew up in the same neighborhood. I played in a band with Kenny for years before Typo was even formed. And I was playing with Kenny when they put Typo together. And then that band broke up and he stayed with Typo. And so, I was familiar with the band before the record ever came out. I had the demos and stuff. And, so, like hearing that first record, especially around that time, like in 1991, what was going on musically, there was nothing like it. And it was like it had, to me, it had everything. It had it was really heavy, uh, aggressive, and a lot of melody. And the song structures I thought were great. And it was just like everything that I thought would be great about a band. And so, and never really expecting anything like, to come of it as far as like, like me joining the band or anything. I was just a big fan of the band. I loved it. And, but I would say, like the first thing that really grabbed me from them was, yeah, like, the song, I Know You're Fucking Someone Else. And like, the lyrics, they were really funny. They were like, they were great. And they were, sarcastic, and there was a lot of humor in it. And it, being that, like I come from the same area as everybody in the band, I got the humor. I picked up on it, and so it had all these elements of what I thought a band would be great. And it was really unique, especially for the time. Like they were a category unto themselves. I'm saying that as a fan, not because, I was in the band for, here we are, 30 years later, but just as a fan, I thought it was really unique. And, as we went on, like Bloody Kisses was pretty good departure from the first record, where there was even more melody and more layers and textures and stuff like that. And when I first heard the demos, I was just like, I was kind of like taken back by it. I was like, whoa, what's going on here? I was like, this isn't like the first record. It was, but it had more melody to it, and the song structures were even better. And the Peter's songwriting, really took a step up. So it took me a minute to like to grab it. And and then I was in the band, and so I had to learn all the songs and stuff, and like really get into what the songs were about. And then it gave me a whole new respect for it.
But just the legacy of what it's become, and just to have been a part of that. It seems that even though Kenny and Josh talk about it, but you're really the spokesman of the band now, because I want to say a lot has to do with it because you're still working so much, but it also just seems that, like you said, you're the
I guess like the way, like the way that I came into the band, it came, I was a fan first, and then, it wasn't just a gig.
But with all these years, this amalgamation of the bands you've worked with, setting up your repertoire, now you come to Dan Lorenzo. And I love the fact, when I got to speak with him, how he explained him and Bobby ended up meeting, and how Bobby Blitz is the one that got you guys together. I was curious because you're a big Overkill fan like I am. All right, if Overkill's coming, we're gonna see them.
Me and Kenny used to go see them all the time at Lemoore.
So how did you initially end up meeting the guys and ended up hanging out, forming that relationship? And what is it about your friendship with Bobby that he just knew, like, no, Dan, this is the guy for you for Patriarchs In Black?
I met Bobby, like became friends with Bobby. We were playing a festival together in Canada, Typo and Overkill. We were just hanging out, like our trailers were right next to each other and stuff. And we just got to like, making some small talk. And then we were talking about music, and we got onto the Rolling Stones, and the two of us are huge Rolling Stones fans. And from there, we became fast friends, just like, always stay in touch with each other, whatever, like whatever, Merry Christmas or, stuff like that. Or if we, we cross paths, I'll always go to one of the shows, and, he's come out to see me. And I knew Dan from back in the Lemoore days. I didn't know him personally, but I knew of him. Like, like every time like Peter would play with Carnivore at Lemoore, or Overkill was playing, Hades was always like one of the support bands. And so I was aware of the band, and I knew Alan from Hades, but I never knew Dan personally. So anyway, Dan was putting this together, and he was talking to Blitz about it, and Bobby recommended me, thinking that I would be a good fit for what Dan was trying to do, what he wanted to do. So Dan just reached out, and he was like, "Hey, whatever, I got your number from Bobby, blah blah blah." A little small talk, and he was talking about putting something together, and you know, he was talking about like putting a band together. And I had met him. Actually, I did meet him. His band played. We played the Bowery Ballroom together, and his band and Silver Tomb were opening up for Life of Agony at the Bowery Ballroom. And so, whatever, we met, like, we just met, like, during the day, load in, things like that, a little bit of small talk or whatever. So anyway, he was putting this thing together, and he reaches out to me about it. And I didn't want to join another band. It's like, I'm already in a lot of bands. It's like I can't manage or, do something like that. It's like, but if you want to record, like, you want to put, do some songs together, I'm down for that. And so, like, when I'm not traveling, or like, when I'm home, I would, get to go to my studio, and I, track the songs and stuff. And so that's what it became. And so when it came time to, have other musicians play on these songs, it was like, what singer do you want to get? It was like, well, why do we have to settle on one singer? It was like, it's not a band, it's a project, and we're not touring, we're not doing anything like that. So why just settle on one guy? It's like, we have friends, and you have friends, I have friends. Let's just get some of our friends to play on the record. And that's what we did. So, like, Dan and I are the constants in all the songs, and then we, between the two of us, we grab other friends and stuff like that. Hey, you want to play on this? You want to play on that? There's no money in it, so it's not like, where you're worrying about, like, the financial aspect of it. It's all, low budget, and but it's fun to get the opportunity to play with some people where I wouldn't normally have that available to me.
Like Run DMC and Miss Vox, who absolutely,
she's awesome. I've known her for years, and Dan was like, who could we get to sing this? And she was like one of the first people that popped up. I was like, got to get Militia for this. And luckily, she was available, and she was into it, and so she did it, and she crushed it.
The two things you stated in other interviews for the other album cycle was, one, you like to follow the guitarist when you drum. You drum to the song. You have the style to play everything. So you try and put what's needed in the music, but you also like to follow the guitar.
Well, usually when the songs are being created, the first thing that is there, that's established, is the, like the riff. So I've always had a habit of, like, like gravitating to what the riff is, and the riff would have some kind of, there's a rhythmic pattern in there that tells me what I should be doing. So I've always had this habit of going towards that, and then kind of like backtracking, as the song gets further developed, and then it starts, like, try to come up with something, for the drums to have, a little bit of their own identity, to, make the song, push. Like, even if it's a, a slow tempo song or something like that, where it feels like the drums are still pushing the song instead of just plodding along. And there are times where, like, following the riff exactly the way it is could be cool, but you don't want to do that for everything.
So when I think of, like, Dan, he's just a riff machine. God, I if I could just have that ability to just, like, oh, damn, all right, cool, 1, 2, 3, boom.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I would love to have that ability myself.
And it really seems like you've been the one kind of challenging him to step out of his musical zone. Because you guys had conversations like, "Hey, bro, you need a solo here," and he's like, "Oh, it don't need a solo. Let it breathe." And you're like,
Oh,
"No, no, 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 no. Hold
he
on."
told you about that?
Like, it's kind of like you could think of all these other musicians, but there's always that back and forth. Like maybe the drummer isn't a guitar player, but he can hear where the song needs to go.
Yeah.
How is that dynamic between you and him? Because initially you said like you were overwhelmed that he was so quick with it, but now it seems that you're really the one pushing him to expand his
The
reach.
songwriting definitely took a step up from the first record to the second record, which was great. And but like part of like my upbringing, my musical upbringing was with Peter and Josh and Kenny, and I learned so much from them. And it was like like we had a certain way of working and developing songs and stuff, and there was always like it always went somewhere. Like Peter would come up with a riff, and like some songwriters would just take that riff and basically just drive it into the ground for 4 minutes or whatever. And Typo's music had all these different layers and textures, and it went somewhere, and it would go to different places and stuff. So when I'm working, whatever band I'm working with, it's like I hear that where it's like it needs to do something else. It needs something. And there's a time and a place where the riff is just that's you just focused on the riff, but like it can't do that for the whole song to me. It needs to do something else. So I take like the things that I learned from Typo, and I try to apply that into whatever group I'm working with. With Dan, like Dan likes to keep things short and sweet, and like really simple and to the point. And I'm like, it needs something else. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, no, it needs something else. It needs something here. You can't just play the same riff for 8 measures and it doesn't do anything. It either needs a vocal melody on it, or it needs a guitar solo, or it needs something. You can't just do this. And so we would have these battles back and forth and stuff. And, so I try to pick and choose my battles. Like I don't want to step on any toes, but like, I try to do something to make the song better, make it a stronger song.
What was a song from the new album, My Ventilation? Go check it out, people. It was out in October, and it is killing it. But what was a song that you guys had that disagreement, and then Dan was kind of like, yeah, you know what? Damn, you're right. You're right.
Any song with a guitar solo in it. I'm pretty sure I'm not exaggerating. Like, unless it was a cover. If one of the cover songs we do, he has no problems playing the solos. But or we'll get somebody else to play the solos or whatever. But usually, like, when there was a spot with like a guitar solo is in the song, he was, kind of hesitant about it at first. And then I don't know if I won't say that he, saw the light or agreed with me. I think he did it more to shut me up. but it got in there, and I think it makes the song stronger, and it brings it to a different place. And like where music kind of has like peaks and valleys and stuff. I prefer to have stuff like that in there. So it would be things like that, and on this record, like, Dan was, came up with a lot of cool suggestions for things, like with different instruments, like, some piano and, violin, like, there's strings and some stuff. And, so I thought that was cool. So it was kind of like, getting a little bit closer to the things that I'm familiar with.
And he did a good job of doing all those incorporations. Speaking of covers, because I can't let this one go. I Stole Your Love. I'm not the world's biggest Kiss fan. I do love them, but when I heard it, I was like, "This is amazing. This is exactly up my alley." Dan, like, "Hey, I'm the only guitar. What's your brother doing?" So
I got my brother on a record. Like my brother and I. We were kids. Growing up, we were big Kiss fans. I wanted to be Peter Criss. He wanted to be Ace Frehley. We still played in like our first bands together, and then my brother didn't. He did not pursue a career in music. He stopped playing in bands when he was like 16 years old. He was like, there's too much drama, too much bullshit. He's like, I'm out of it. And so anyway, the opportunity came up. Like, we would get together for years. My brother and friends of ours, we, get like a cooler filled with beer, go to the studio for a night, drink beer, and play Kiss songs. And so with Dan, we were doing some Kiss covers. I was like, I got to get my brother on a record. And so I got my brother to do the solo. And so that's where that whole thing came from. And it's fun. That's just like, the pure, like, just fun aspect of, playing. And I was happy that I was able to finally get my brother a credit on a record, where you could open up the record and see his name there and stuff. And I was like, I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, especially like the stories you have, them being so instrumental to your career, or even the story like your first memory of like the Rolling Stones Sticky Fingers album in your car with your dad when you got it.
Carriage in the stroller.
It's those moments that really like, they mean so much more. For this new album, what would you say was, I wouldn't say a passion child, but what was the song that, you know what, I really got to get this one right? I would have thought it could have been Crooked Smile because it had the organs, had a little bit more to like past playing. But what was a song? Because you usually send Dan 20 takes. You give him a lot of options to work with for these songs.
Yeah, when I'm working on the songs, it's like, because I'm working on it. I'm in a studio by myself, so I'm just playing what I think the song needs, or what I think will, what I think fits, and I don't have another set of ears to challenge that, so to speak, or like, to help me make it better, or so I keep on sending them things like, what do you think of these ideas? What do you think of this? So I'll change some things up, basically sending him like different versions, and then he'll be like, oh, this was really cool, or like, whatever, so then he hears something, there's something tangible there. And then I can get more input from him to say, oh, I was kind of hearing this, or, kind of hearing that, or a lot of times I wasn't, he goes, I wasn't expecting that. And then I have to ask, does that mean it's good? Because it'd be like, yeah, I really wasn't expecting that. But, and, like working with, some people could be very, like they'll be very specific in what they hear in their head when they're coming up with their riffs and stuff like that. And they'll be like, oh, like, it needs to do this. Like, sometimes like, like working with Kenny and Silvertune, sometimes he'll have something very specific that he's looking for. And I do the same thing with him. He'll just send me a guitar track, scratch track with a vocal line, scratch vocal, and I'm just putting drums to it. And then he'll, I get the feedback from him. He'd be like, in this part, no, it needs to do this in this part, and Dan doesn't really get too specific, but after I send him something, then he'll start getting, start giving me input, once there's some kind of like framework there. He'll be like, oh, why don't you try this? Or like, like this part was really cool here. Can you do this there? Or, something like that. And, like working with Type O, Peter wasn't really drum specific either. Like once in a while he would have something. He'd be like, yeah, I hear, like, I want you to do something with the toms here, do something tribal or militant or, something like that. But most of the time it was like, just kind of left it alone. And Josh was very drum specific when producing the records. He'd get really specific, and we'd have some pretty epic battles. But like, like all that, that education I take with me, and I try to apply it with whoever I'm working with. So I try to find what's right for the song. And I have a hard time sometimes with like, just getting guitar riffs. So you just get, guitar riffs played to a click track, and it's like, is this going to be the verse? Is this going to be the chorus? Is, like what is it going to be? So you're trying to apply another instrument to it, but it's like it's hard to see the big picture of it, to see the whole thing. So you just take pot shots and you're like, well, I hope this is the verse, I hope this is the chorus, or like, so I try to create a song structure with the guitar riffs. And it's tough too. Like, like with Dan and I, we develop the music. I have no idea what the vocals are going to be at all. Nothing, there isn't, I don't have a melody line. I don't have anything. So, and I'm just like, all right, this is going to be the verse. This is going to be the chorus, or, and so I try to like, develop the song that way. And I try to, apply the drums and the dynamics and the drum tracks and stuff to help, build up the chorus, or, and then sometimes you come find out that was not a verse. That wasn't the chorus. And then it's like, shit. So then I was like, I get the opportunity sometimes to like, tinker with the song, like, retool it and, change some things around to try to, make it more congruent with the rest of the instruments and the vocals and stuff like that.
Just a sidetrack, because as you're speaking and you're talking about all these people you've learned with and like how you've used your past to help the current playing, I can't let it slide that you did learn a couple of drum lessons from AJ Piero, rest in peace, Twisted Sister.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
He had a point, and I would have been a little confused too. Like when you guys went to him to get lessons, like as a fan, I'm like, yeah, man, show me anything. Show me a 1, 2, 3, 4. But, for the grand scheme, he's like, you kind of already know what you're doing, even though you're self-taught. Is there anything that sticks out from his lessons? Because when I listen to Twisted Sister, fabulous drummer, I just hate the drums he's hitting. Like everything, all those fills work, and I'm just like, if they could just get him a stronger sound, a more punch.
But that comes with money, like those early records, those early Twisted Sister records, they were all on a shoestring budget, and like they don't have the technology that's available to you now, like where you can come up. I could, like the things that are available to me now, just sitting on my couch while I'm watching South Park, I could come up with like, killer drum sounds, and that just wasn't available back then. And but AJ, to his credit, he was way overqualified for that band. He really was. He was a phenomenal drummer. He was an accomplished player. Like I met AJ right before he quit Twisted Sister the first time. So like in the mid '80s, I'd met him, and I used to work at a studio in Brooklyn, a rehearsal studio, and AJ was starting to come there when he was playing in that band Cities. And so I worked at the studio. He was there. Then he wound up working at the studio for a little while too, and so we became friends. And I teched for him a couple of times, when he was playing with Cities and when he was playing in TT Quick. So we were friends, and my buddy, who was my boss, Peter used to come and see us and hang out with at the shop. My buddy played also. And so, so we were all friends, and me and my buddy, we were like trying to talk AJ into giving lessons. Cause he had, at various points he had students and stuff like that. And at the time he didn't have any students, and we were trying to talk him into, giving us lessons. And he had asked me, basically, like you had mentioned, he goes, you know how to play. Why do you want to take lessons? And I had explained to him that I was self-taught, and that I was like, I know I'm doing a bunch of things wrong, and I want to learn how to do them right. I want to learn how to properly play. I want to learn how to read charts, and like to actually know what I'm doing, and do it correctly. And he was like, okay, fair enough. And so we took lessons we went lessons for a few months. And then he goes, I don't have the time. He goes, I can't do it anymore. I don't have the time to do it. And that was it. So I had a few months with AJ, but AJ, as a kid, was performing, playing big band stuff. And up until he died, we always stayed in touch with each other and stuff like that. And we were together at some event or something, And remember hearing the story, and I wasn't sure about it. And I was like, I got to ask you, I got to get it from the horse's mouth. I was like, what's the tie with Gene Krupa? I was like, did you take lessons from Gene Krupa? He was like, well, yeah, sort of. When I was a kid, he was like, Gene Krupa saw me playing and he became friends with my parents. And they would like go to Gene Krupa's house for like Sunday dinners and stuff. They were like, his parents were friends with Gene, and then Gene would give him like, maybe not lessons, but like pointers and stuff or whatever. So there's the bloodline, like there's the DNA that trickled down. So, but there was an actual Gene Krupa connection with AJ. But AJ had like, you go to when I go to his house, like he was giving lessons at his mother's house. And it was like a shrine to AJ, and like all these awards and pictures and stuff from, like, by the time he was like 11 years old, this guy had all this stuff done, and one of the coolest things I ever saw of AJ's playing was he had and this was the 80s, so he had a VHS tape of a clinic that he did with Alan White from Yes. And the two of them were trading off. They were doing this performance together, this drum clinic kind of thing. And I remember just looking at the television, and I was like, holy shit, this guy is unbelievable. And, and then he would like, whatever, he made his bread and butter, playing We're Not Gonna Take It and I Want to Rock and, stuff like that. But like watching this video, my jaw was on the floor. And I was like, at the time, I was maybe like, 18, 19 years old. And but he always took care of me. Like, he used to give me drumsticks. Like for a long time, I didn't have to buy drumsticks. He'd always give me like a batch of sticks. Here you go, kid, stuff like that. And when I joined Typo, he gave me a whole bunch of contacts to reach out to for like endorsements and stuff like that. And like, and taught me, like explained to me how to, be with people. Like, like with getting in endorsements and stuff, and, like to have have a proper etiquette to, develop good relationships with endorsers and stuff, not just sitting there with your hands out and saying, give me stuff. And very valuable, like he was helping me out right up until the end, until he passed away. Yeah.
But it seems like you've also done your part in giving back from the lessons you've had, not just from him and everybody else, but helping others and giving drum lessons yourself. I did have to ask this last question for Veneration. Run DMC was on the album. You are from Brooklyn. I had to know if you had love for hip hop, and if that made it a little extra special, or were you kind of like still like, nah, rock and roll only?
Oh, like it was kind of weird because like like when I was in junior high school and stuff like that, like you'd always see the kids outside school with the cardboard on the floor in the schoolyard and the break dancing. That was as I got older, like like even in the studios, like there was only a few rehearsal studios where the bands the kids could go learn how to play and like practice and stuff. And you didn't see a lot of like, like the part of Flatbush where we grew up and stuff, there wasn't a lot of hip hop. There wasn't a lot of rap groups. Like, they weren't coming to the studios to rehearse and stuff like that. But, as it was starting to, become, like this major force in the music industry, and you saw like all these people, a lot of these artists, they were all from Brooklyn. And it's like, how did you miss this? I mean, there was stuff like, I was only really aware of the stuff that was on the radio, but yeah, I knew who Run DMC was, and Grandmaster Flash and LL Cool J, but like by the time, like, by the time it really became like, really huge and stuff, like, I guess like, the Eminems and, the Tupacs and Biggies and, stuff like that. And like Biggie's from Brooklyn. He's like some like, he's this Brooklyn icon, and it was like, like until he was huge, I was like, no, I never heard of him. It was in my backyard. I had no idea. I never had an issue with it. Like, it wasn't, I won't say that it was like, my thing, but I was fine with it. It was cool. I've wanted to work with like, rap artists and stuff because it's all rhythm. So a lot of the times, like, I won't really be listening to what they're actually saying, but I'm listening to the rhythmic patterns in their performance. And I'll be like, oh yeah, he's singing in triplet over the, blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, that's pretty cool.
But that's the beauty of being a drummer, because you can break that down and hear that they're actually doing
Yeah. Yeah. The rhythmic patterns of what's going on and stuff definitely appeal to me. But yeah, it's not on my playlist on, it's just not there. But I don't have an issue with it. I admire it. And and of course everybody knew who Run DMC was, like there's no getting away from that one. They would just, and they're like, like the original, with the Adidas and the, the hats and, like the image I thought was great. And like Daryl's had a strong connection to, like rock and metal. I mean, aside, like whatever they opened the doors, with doing the thing, the Walk This Way with the Aerosmith and stuff. And, obviously I was aware of that one, I knew about that. And then the Beastie Boys, I bought the Beastie Boys record when it came out.
Oh man.
Still. Yeah, I did. And I've always liked what they did. And I liked how they, later on in their career, they started like, using their own playing, like, where they were playing to, like Sabotage and, things like that, which they were bridging that gap a little bit more, like they started out as like, like that original, like, rap format. And then it started becoming a little bit more musical, which I thought was really cool.
You're so busy, and something I never shy away from in these interviews is I always ask about the significant other. You guys have a wonderful charity helping these pets, these animals that have a harder time getting, your daughters, one is in school in Florida, the other one, I'm not too sure. No, she's your stepdaughter. You love her too.
My stepdaughter, yeah, she's here in Texas. And my Sophia just graduated from
Congrats.
Tampa, and she graduated in May, and now she's working as a medical assistant, for like a year or so, and then she plans to go to graduate school. And yeah, and then we got the dogs. Everybody's, Anya moved out, so, and but yeah, the rescue, that's really time consuming, like especially for my wife, like, it's it's a labor of love, and she keeps saying like, I got to stop doing this. I need a break. I need to slow down, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then there's another dog in the house.
It's a good heart. That's what it is. She can't get rid of the good nature.
But it is, just like me being away as much as I am, that takes a toll on our relationship, like, all the suffering that these dogs go through, and the amount of care that they require and stuff like that. It really does take a lot out of you, and I always tell her, I was like, cause she's always saying, I got to stop. I got to slow down. It's too much, whatever. And I'm just like, it's what you do, just give into it and accept it. And, especially, like some of the dogs, like, they'll be with us for a little while and then we lose them. Like, like some of them, they can't recover from, what they've been through, or there was like, whatever, some kind of disease or, cancer or, things like that. And it's like losing one of your own. So, and every time, like it takes a piece out of you. And that's something that happens pretty often in our house. I mean, some people, friends of ours, whatever, they lose one pet and they have like, this, unconsolable grief. And like for us, I kind of feel like a policeman, like see what cops see every day, and they just become, they could just shut off their emotions and just, deal with the aspects of, the clerical stuff. And it's just matter of fact. And, it's just another day at the office. And that's kind of where I've gotten with some of these guys, and I understand that it comes with the territory of what we're doing, but for every one that that we can't save, Bernadette, you know she's a rock star, and we've had, like, I don't know, like in the last couple of years there's been like 60 dogs in her house. So if you lost, like, five or six of them, you still were able to save and find loving homes and stuff for the other 54. So I try to look at that part and, like, see the good work the good work that comes of it.
How did you initially meet the missus? Was it like a random, like, hey, I saw her at the bookstore, or was it at a show? Like,
Oh, I met her at a show. I met her at a show years before we started dating. She was a friend of a friend. And then, fast forward, I don't know, 5, 6 years later, whatever, my marriage was finished, and then we started talking, and then started dating, and then 20 years later.
we're not gonna hop over 20 years later. Like, that's not a milestone. That's a hell of a run.
Snap of a finger, 20 years. I just hope that there's another 20. You never know what's going to happen.
I have to say, you've been part of some of the most fun and nostalgic shows for me as a fan. When you came to my hometown with Quiet Riot, man, I can't tell you how cool it was, not only to see and speak with Rudy in person after our interview, but to see you guys just chilling back there. Total rock star show. No drugs, no booze, but everything I envisioned as a kid. Just walking around, preparing, getting the hair ready. I don't even think you had drumsticks, but you were doing paradiddles. I was like, this is great. And another time, you and Danzig played in Philadelphia. It was 2018. Changed my life. Changed my life. And I had to ask, what are some of your most cherished memories playing in New Jersey and Philadelphia? I know you had a lot of great shows with Typo. You've been there with Danzig at the Electric Factory a couple of times. So
the ones that stand out in Philly are the Halloween shows at the Trocadero with Typo. Which we were able to play on Halloween for like 5 years straight or something. Like, it was like it really started out as we wanted to tour around Halloween, do some shows, whether we had an album out or not. Like, usually when you didn't have a record out, it was harder to get dates. And, but we always wanted to play it on Halloween. And it was, we couldn't get a Halloween show in New York because Alice Cooper had this thing that he was doing every Halloween in New York. And it was like, we can't compete with that. And so we went to Philadelphia. And then playing in Philadelphia on Halloween became a thing. And like the shows, I've meet so many fans, like, when we're in that, when I'm down there and stuff, and they're like, oh man, I remember those Trocadero shows on Halloween. Those were the best. And, like, people, like, they look back on it, and it really was like, an event. And those stand out, like those stand out more than playing New York. Playing New York with a lot of times was always like really stressful because it's a hometown show. And so, like, you got all your friends and stuff. Everybody's like, like, hey, you got me on the list. Everything's like, about like, getting in on the list, and, like making sure your friends are taken care of. And like, you never just like, you can never just be in your routine. Like what you saw with Quiet Riot, like, you saw it's just like, just getting into that headspace, to perform and like, do your show. It was always like insanity to the next level when you played in New York. And so it was always stressful. And so afterwards, you're like, you're just glad that it's over. It's like, oh yeah, all right, it's great. Got to see everybody. We got to hang out. Whatever. And then you get on the bus, and you're just like, oh, you were like completely exhausted, and it had nothing to do with the show. It had nothing to do with the performance. You like completely wiped out. But yeah, Philly stands out more than New York.
that's a statement. I might have to quote that. Somebody that has had such an interesting career and did it on his terms but gets a lot of flack for it is Danzig. And you've already spoken about working with him, and it's cut and dry. Show up, do your job, boom. You won't have an issue.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
what is a business lesson that you learned from him? Maybe he went out of his way to tell you, Johnny, do this, or maybe it was just something you saw, but something that you were like, you know what? That's something I need to remember business wise. It just always it fascinates me how he's been able to do so much on his own. And sometimes you do have to be selfish. It's just where's that line of going too far versus this is
Yeah.
business.
With Glenn, you have to admire his like, I don't know if perseverance is the right word, but his determination, where he really, like, he's walked down his own path and he's managed to stay relevant. Like, he's like, you go see Danzig, it's not like, you're going to see, like a nostalgia act or, something like that. It's still a thing, Danzig's, playing or, whatever. And, and now that he's, now that he's embraced his past and he's been doing the, like the Misfit shows and stuff like that. But up until that point, Glenn never looked back. He never looked back and never sat down and rested on what he had accomplished. He always looked ahead. And I always admired that. Like, and he doesn't give a shit about anything. It's just what he's doing right now. It's all he cares about. And that I always admired that about him. And I think, like, now, like, like for him and like, like the storied career, this iconic, he's an icon. And the career that he's had, it's all because of his determination of always looking ahead. And he never, like, thought about, what he accomplished, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Now he's like, in a more like, he's in this point in his career where he's celebrating some of these things. He's acknowledging them, like, like doing like a 30th anniversary shows, like, playing records in their entirety and stuff like that. But like up until then, he didn't pay attention to any of that. That was all back then. And he'll tell, like, I've heard a million war stories. Like, he'll talk about about the past, like, telling stories, but he didn't like rest on what he accomplished back then.
Comparing that to working with a guy like Rudy Sarzo, absolute, as you said, icon, but so kind, so giving, so it's like the energy he has, it rejuvenates you. How would you consider, like, okay, you're going from John to Rudy, what is the business sense of Rudy like compared to John?
Rudy is not motivated by money. Doesn't matter. He makes money, like, he earns his money, and that's it. That's all he cares. Like, that's his extent about being concerned about money. Everything with him is like, he's like this very like spiritual person. So it's like, every he's like very emotionally driven about what he's doing, which is why he came back to Quiet Riot. It was not about money. It was about, about celebrating, the legacy, and like, with Frankie wanting Rudy to continue with the band and stuff like that. So he was doing this, for Frankie in a sense, so, and, I guess, like, being that kind of person, good things come to him. And he just happens to be like one of the greatest bass players on the planet. So, I feel bad for him. Now he's stuck with me.
What a fabulous career you've had. I always end these with the most important question. What is the best piece of advice someone else has given you that readily comes to mind, or something every now and again where you're just going through life, you're going through the motions, and then boom, you just remember them telling it to you, and it's just always been a guiding mantra?
What I've tried to tell my kids, and what I try to live by, which it's not any like, this isn't like, some kind of like, worldly advice or anything, it's pretty simple. I said, I said, if, you're going to have to work for a living. And, I said, to me, winning is doing something you love for a living. And I said, when you're passionate about your work, I said, you're never looking at the clock. I said, you can have a great job and, whatever, making a lot of money, but if you're not happy, I said, it doesn't matter how much money you make or, whatever, you're not happy. But when you wake up in the morning and you're like, I got work today, like I can't wait to, get to work. And you don't look at you're not looking at your watch and saying, oh, is it 5 o'clock yet or anything? Or, it's like when you do something you love, you wouldn't bat an eyelash of putting in a 14-hour day or, whatever. Same, like for us, like, now, like the travel can be pretty grueling. And, but, I play drums for a living, it's like, I love that. So it's to me, that's pretty simple advice. Like, if you love what you do, you're not worried about like, the amount of work that you have to put into something. I'd be doing this if I wasn't getting paid. if I wasn't making any money, which is like, a lot of the projects that I'm involved with, because I just love doing what I do. It's not motivated by money. I'm sure I could have done something with my life that probably pays better, but this was what I chose to do. This is what I wanted to do this from when I was, I was a little kid, and I was like, when I was a kid, I was like, I want to be a rock star, and, I want to play Madison Square Garden. I never played Madison Square Garden, but, I'm still pushing, still trying to push ahead.
Give it some time. You'll be there. You definitely live like a rock
Well,
star.
I got to play the Nassau Coliseum. We played Giant Stadium. So I was like, it's like almost got the, the trifecta, just need the Garden. I was like, I play the Garden, I can get out of this and be happy. It doesn't matter. Like at this point, it doesn't matter because I just can't believe that I'm still doing this at this point in my life, and it's like, I remember as a kid, like when I was like 18 or, whatever, it's like, oh, I'll be out of this by the time I'm 30. Who's 30 years old still playing? And it's like, no way, I'm 55 now and I'm playing more than ever. So it's a double-edged sword, but it's, that's another thing too. Like, be careful what you wish for, you might get it. And then, you have to take, you take the ups and downs that come along with it too. And that's, like is for all the ups and, like there's been, low points and, 1 minute, you got a lot of money in the bank. Next time you're digging through the couch for change,
Ladies and gentlemen, I can't tell you how thankful I am for this opportunity. Years in the making. Here we are with John Kelly. And do not forget to check out Patriarchs in Black, My Veneration, out now. And it's coming out to vinyl soon via
January.
In January. And also go check out them on Instagram, Patriarchs in Black. Check out their website. Check out Johnny Kelly on Instagram as well. Johnny Kelly 1313. Guys, I can't tell you how thankful I was for this opportunity. Sir, thank you for your time.
Thank you. This was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it a lot.
And everybody else, as always, cool. Be smart, be mindful, rock on, ninja out. Thank you, sir. That was fun. I really, you're just a wealth of I just love when you talk, man. You got so much good stuff to say.
I've told my kids, I was like, I have no retirement. There's no 401k in this. And I was like, but I got some great stories.
Living like Lemmy a little bit, man.
He kept it very simple. He had a very simple lifestyle. Hey, this is Johnny Kelly from Patriarchs in Black, Typo Negative, Quiet Riot, Danzig, Kill Devil Hill, Silver Tomb, and I Am. And I probably left out a couple of other bands, but you're watching John the Ninja, and my bands could fill up your playlist.
That's going at the end now.
Woo, baby, you listen to John the Ninja. All your ears are about to go on a vacation. John the Ninja's got what you need.